Good evening. Tonight, the big story, Trayvon Martin. The latest developments, a new witness to the shooting comes forward, telling Anderson Cooper they heard an altercation, someone yelling for help, and also what the witness describes as a painful scream. The witness saw two people on the ground, one on top of another, and then hears the sound of a gun going off. Also, new questions about that police video of George Zimmerman. The tape shows no obvious signs of any injuries, but authorities say he was given first aid at the scene. In just a moment, my exclusive interview with George Zimmerman's brother, Robert, breaking his silence. Also tonight, Mike Tyson. The champ is here and he's angry about the Trayvon case. He tweeted the shooting puts us all in fear. I'll talk more about that and much more with Iron Mike just ahead. But let's get straight to the big story, Trayvon Martin. With me for an exclusive interview is Robert Zimmerman, whose brother George killed Trayvon in what he said was self-defense. Robert, thank you for joining me tonight. Why are you here? Why do you want to do this interview?
I think the tide has turned. There's a lot of loose ends to this story. Some of them have to do with the events of that night in an investigation. Some of them have moved on to a lot of hate speech, people like the McLean family having to flee their home, people putting emotions ahead of fact and putting our family and other families in danger.
Have your family had death threats?
Oh, yes. Yes. And they never...
Credible threats?
Credible threats. Yes, they have. Yeah.
Against more than one member, against more than George, against others?
You know, I'm really not at liberty to discuss exactly who was threatened or how they were threatened, but I can tell you that I myself have been contacted by law enforcement too, because there was credible intelligence that could threaten me. So I look a lot like my brother. People can easily confuse us. And in this misinformation that's been going on, that's been a constant fear of mine that I would be.
Nobody has heard from your brother, and therefore a mythology has built up about him. He is at the moment one of the most hated people in America, and we don't know anything about him. Tell me about your brother. Tell me what you want to say about him that can be his defense, if you like.
Yeah, I agree. It is a mythology that's been built up, and it's not because no one has had anything to say about George, or because his family doesn't love him or support him, or not because he doesn't have supporters. It's been because the people who love and support George, his family namely, also respect the system, the judicial system, and the legal system that we have in America, and that we don't have, sadly, sometimes the opportunity to comment when there are investigations going forth, to respect the integrity of that actual investigation. But as far as George goes, he's the neighbor that everybody would want to have. He's the kind of guy that sees somebody struggling with changing a tire and stops to help them, or helps older people with their groceries. He goes out of his way to help people. He always has. That's the kind of guy.
There'll be people watching this saying, sure, maybe he was, maybe that is what he did. Then why would somebody like that? Why would somebody kind to the neighbors, wanting to do the right thing, do the decent thing, why would somebody like that get into some kind of altercation with a young 17-year-old boy, defy instructions he's given from a 911 operator, chase after him, some altercation clearly appears to have happened, and then your brother pulls out a gun and shoots him? Why would your brother do that?
Well, you know, taking from what you said, when you say chasing after and getting into an altercation, there's a lot of ways that people get into altercations. You know, I believe that if you wanted to reach over this table and assault me badly enough, you could be armed with chapstick and a toothpick and still put me in reasonable fear of my life. He didn't get into an altercation. People don't just get into altercations. There are aggressors.
When did you first hear from George after this incident? You personally?
Me personally, I heard immediately after the incident. And by immediately, I would say within 24 hours.
Within 24 hours, so the next day?
Would be the closest I'm willing to narrow the window down of exactly when George spoke. Yeah, would be within the next 24 hours.
And what exactly did he tell you about what happened?
Well, some of the details have come out. You know, unfortunately, Ms. Corey's investigation has been compromised. Some details have been leaked, and that's why we can talk as a family more about now. What George told us was the truth. This fantasy or this mythology of that he chased a person is just absolutely false. He didn't chase anyone.
But on the 911 call, he says that he's seen somebody suspicious who is running, and he says he's pursuing him, and he's told, please don't do that.
And he says, okay. And anything past that point is conjecture by the media.
Let's listen to this crucial bit of tape. This is from a 911 call.
He's running.
He's running? Which way is he running?
Down towards the other entrance of the neighborhood.
Okay. Which entrance is that he's heading towards?
The back entrance.
Are you following him?
Yeah.
Okay, we don't need you to do that.
So, I mean, the dispatcher says okay.
Right. George says okay. He says we don't need you to do that, and then George does stop following that individual. I believe he may have actually lost sight of that individual.
When you say he stopped following, how do you know that?
I believe that's what George, and that's what's in the police reports, and that's what has been leaked.
But the police report would be based on what George told the police on the night,
right?
Wouldn't it?
Right. Well,
there's been no actual eyewitness to this. It's only George's word, isn't it?
Correct. It is only George's word. At this point, there was an eyewitness or two to the actual assault, but to the part where you're talking about where he followed or did not follow, he did not follow, nor did he ever catch up to Mr. Martin. Mr. Martin allegedly was close to his home, yet found himself so far from the front door, I guess unable to find his way home. If he were really being pursued, I don't know how he couldn't make it home.
What did George tell you Trayvon Martin allegedly did to him?
What has come out that I can talk about today is that Trayvon Martin somehow snuck up on him, and according to Mr. Crump, their own attorney, he was on, we don't know if this is verifiable information, but he was on the phone with his girlfriend. I don't know if that's a police source, but I know his attorney at least holds up the girlfriend as a source and says, Trayvon told him, no, I'm not running. I'm going to walk real slow. And Trayvon went up to George and said the first thing to George. And there's some discussion about, did he say, do you have a problem? Do you have a problem? Are you following me? Why are you following me?
What did George tell you he said?
One of those things, do you have a problem with me following me? Why are you following me? Something like that. My brother drew back to grab his phone in retreat to call again 911 and say, well, now this person who I lost sight of and was not pursuing has now confronted me. That's what he did. He never got to make that call because he was attacked by Mr. Martin.
And when you say attacked, what did George tell you Trayvon did to him?
Well, I don't know. I believe that at the time, George knew he had sustained some kind of injury to his face or his nose. I don't know that he knew it was broken. I know that...
You see, here's the weird thing. How do you explain, as a family, the video that came out last night with your brother within, not much time after this incident, walking around unaided, perfectly okay, with no apparent markings to his face? I mean, if you get a broken nose or the kind of head injuries sustainable from having your head smashed on a concrete floor, you're going to have blood everywhere. You're going to have visible injuries. There is nothing. I mean, we're looking at the images now. There's no visible sign of any attack. How do you explain that?
We're confident the medical records are going to explain all of George's medical history, both how he was treated at the scene and how he was not. To me, his nose looks swollen in that video. I'm his brother. So to me...
Have you talked to George about the video since it came out?
I'm really not at liberty to say that particular piece of information about the video or about how he thinks his appearance may or may not be. What I think I see is a swollen nose. Now, I'm not a physician, you're not a physician. A lot of these injuries take time, 24 hours, 36 hours, to show the bruising. Sometimes the bone breaks and the blood is swallowed. Like in the case of, for example, if your hand would be on someone's nose and mouth, preventing them from
Does he have any injuries now?
His nose is still broken.
It's still broken?
His nose is still broken, yeah.
A month later, it's still broken?
His nose, I don't know about the back of his head. I mean, his nose is still healing. It's not healed. He's not, he has very severe emotional injuries. He's been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. He was not right from the moment it happened. He didn't call his family and express anything but, sadness. It was just a darkness. He had changed. He wasn't the same. He would never be the same. He was very disappointed that none of the neighbors had come out and helped, that the whole situation potentially could have been avoided by just someone coming out and saying, hey, what's going on out there? Or
let me ask you a difficult question,
sure,
Robert, and you're not on trial for anything here. You're not the accused, but you are the brother of George. If we reverse this situation, and it was your brother who had been gunned down in exactly the same set of circumstances, and the worst that had happened as far as his behavior was that he had been followed and he got into an altercation and he was unarmed, he just had a bag of Skittles on him, and a guy who was much older, who had followed him in the street, pulled out a gun and shot him dead. Would you not, at the very least, if you're honest and candid about this, would you not have expected that person to at least be arrested, to at least perhaps face some kind of trial where the full evidence could come out?
Well, you know, I take a pause to that whole, you know, conjecture again of pulled out a gun and shot him. That's absolutely not fact. It's
Well, that is what
absolutely
happened, though.
No, it is not what happened.
But you did pull out a gun and shoot him, right?
Well, he stopped someone from disarming him and shooting him. He didn't pull out a gun and shoot him. George showed tremendous restraint.
But he had the gun on him, right?
He had a permit to carry that gun.
Right, but where was the gun?
The gun, I believe, was in his tucked inside his pant waist.
Right.
In a waist holster.
So he has pulled it out and he has fired it.
Well, he has taken control of his firearm. He prevented his firearm from being taken from him and used against him, and that's called saving your life.
Right, so you believe as a family, is this what George told you the next day? That Trayvon was trying to grab his gun to use against him?
My father also is on record yesterday night saying that, and again what Trayvon said was either to the effect of, I believe this is going to be easy, you die tonight, or you have a piece, you die tonight, and then attempted to disarm him. So when you say have a bag of Skittles and an iced tea, nobody just stood there with a bag of Skittles and an iced tea. If you return force with force when somebody assaults you, George was out of breath, he was barely conscious. His last thing he remembers doing was moving his head from the concrete to the grass so that if he was banged one more time, he wouldn't be, you know, wearing diapers for the rest of his life and being spoon-fed by his brother. And there would have been George dead had he not acted decisively and instantaneously in that moment when he was being disarmed.
I mean, there were people watching this saying, well, the family would say this. They're protecting their brother. He may well have invented this whole story. Once he realized what he'd done, he may have just thought, the only way I can get out of this is to use this stand your ground law under Florida law and just invent this whole story. He may have inflicted the injuries on himself. We don't know, do we? Nobody actually knows.
Well, the eyewitness that was there actually saw. I don't think his face has been revealed. I know that the police have his testimony. I know that media in Florida have gone to his house and he doesn't want to open the door to reveal, but he did apparently see the whole thing from the first blow.
Hold that thought, Robert. We'll come back after a short break and discuss this more.
Thanks.